Hi, and welcome to this week's video blog. I'm Sarah Hammerker, and I'm glad you joined me. Today I want to talk about the creativity of boredom. With summer coming up in a few weeks, sooner probably than we think, parents will soon hear cries of "I'm bored" from their kids. Why? Because your children have been used to having the structure of school. Whether you homeschool, whether your kids go to private or public school, they have a rhythm and a routine to their days during the school year. Sure, Saturdays are different, but then again, think of how we use our Saturdays. Most of our children are in a lot of activities, so they're constantly going to places, you're visiting, you're running errands, you're doing all the things that you didn't want to do during the week, and you're packing it into Saturday and or Sunday. So your kids really don't have the opportunity to be bored. Now, why do we think boredom is such a terrible thing these days? This is a relatively new thing. When I was a kid, and a lot of my Gen X parents and fellow parents and friends, they remember being bored as a kid. And it wasn't that big a deal. So why do we really why does it throw us when our kids are like, "I'm bored," and they get all whiny? Let's look back a little bit. In fact, I'm going to go back all the way to medieval times. If a child or an adult had displayed boredom symptoms in medieval times, the person would be charged with committing acedia. That's a dangerous form of spiritual alienation, a devaluing of the world and its creator. I want you to think about that. Boredom, acedia, was labeled as a sin, and that it was because, not because being bored was sinful, but because they considered it being alienated, devaluing the world. If you couldn't find something to do in this wonderful world that God, our Creator, had created, there must be something deeper wrong with you. And frankly, most kids probably weren't bored during that time and adults, because they were trying to survive. Now today, with the many labor-saving devices of our American households, most of our kids have the luxury of free time, which they tend to fill with electronics and or organized events by adults, especially during the school year. However, that constant stream of electronic stimuli and adult-directed activities, sports, etc., has bred a new boredom epidemic, one that's fueled by an ever-growing need of kids for constant amusement. Electronic, video games, television, movies, iPads, computers, phones, it's all in our hands. We have access to all this information and lights and games and stimuli rewards, or we're being shuttled from one event to another. So we have hardly any time for true free time. Now, frankly, parents, I'm talking to you. We're to blame for a lot of this. We have created this new negative form of a numb mind because we lack the tolerance of whiny kids. And I get it. I have 4 children, and there are times when they start whining, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, isn't that kind of like fingernails on a chalkboard, or that just kind of can make you get all kind of crazy. I don't know how many times I've seen toddlers in a grocery store with their eyes fixed on the screen of their mom's smartphone, oblivious to the world around them. At the first peep from a young child at the doctor's office, out comes the smartphone, and into the little hands goes the electronic babysitter. Now, we're no different though, right? Anytime that we're standing in line or waiting for, even waiting 1 second, we're looking down at our own electronics. We have forgotten to have that freedom to let our mind rest, to let our mind be bored, to not be checking, looking, having that constant stimulus to our hand. We numb our minds with electronic stimuli all day long, from constant Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever social media you like checks, to texting while walking, driving, which is illegal. No, put your phone down when you're driving, sitting at a traffic light, at the dinner table, in line at the store. It's starting to be the exception when you see a grown-up in public who is not tethered to a phone or a tablet. And so far, that would be me. I do not have a smartphone. My husband does not have a smartphone. My teenage daughters do not have a smartphone. That's another video blog, but I like not being connected because I can see the value of letting my mind rest. When our kids are always being entertained and plugged in with electronic devices, it's no wonder they beg for that same pacifier. It's no wonder they whine. It's no wonder they cry, "I'm bored," at the very second that they're not being told what to do or in an environment that has something for them to do. We've forgotten how important the right kind of boredom can be to stimulate creativity and spurts of pure fun and genius. Richard Louv, in his one of my favorite parenting books, Last Child in the Woods, says, and I'm quoting, "There's an important distinction between a constructively bored mind and a negatively numbed mind. Constructively bored kids eventually turn to a book or build a fort or pull out the paints and come and create or come home sweaty from a game of neighborhood basketball." I want you to think about that. There's a difference between being constructively bored, and that constructively bored state has the value of creating creativity, of giving kids that stimuli that they need, that bored stimuli that they need to create something, to do something, besides sit around and whine about being bored. Opposed to a negatively numbed mind. Constructively bored kids will create. You know, I often will kick my kids outside, all of them sometimes, and especially when they were a little younger, I've been known to lock the door to keep them outside. And especially when they start whining about being bored, or they say there's nothing to do outside, and I say, okay, you know what? I don't care. You can sit on the porch and whine. We have a front porch. You can sit on the front porch and whine. Take the kitchen timer, set it for 30 minutes. At the end of 30 minutes, you can come back in. 9 times out of 10, very rarely did they want to come in after 30 minutes because they had been constructively bored and figured out something to do. And then they were engaged in a game of play of some sort, some imaginative sort of play. We rob our children of the opportunity to be creative when we rob them of the opportunity to be constructively bored. As we lead up to summer, I encourage you, in fact, I beg you, please, wean your kids off their electronic devices. Start letting them feel that constructively boredom. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. They're going to be whiny. They're going to act like they don't know what to do. Ignore them. Ignore them. And that's going to be hard for you. Do not give them something to do. You tell them it's their job as kids. Play is their work. They need to figure it out. And then if they keep wanting to, give them chores. That's the easy way to do that. I had a chore jar. They said bored. They had to draw an extra chore out of the jar and do it to my satisfaction. It took one time for each of them to try it because they wanted to see what was in the jar. I have weird kids. And then they decided, oh, well, yeah, I think I'm not going to say I'm bored. I think I'm going to find something to do. So as we lead up to this summer, I challenge you to unplug your kids for a day. No TV, no video games, no movies, no smartphones, no computers, no tablets, and nothing. Just them and their world. Do it a day, and then do it another day, and then do it a week. Sure, the first day will be spent with them saying they have nothing to do. Stick to your guns. Make sure you have things stocked for them to do. Go through your art supplies. Make sure there's things. Make sure that their bikes are in working order. Make sure that they have a ball to play outside. There are lots of things you can do to make sure that they have the things. And then just say, go find something to do. And my favorite response is, if you don't find something to do, I'll find something to do. And my kids know when I say that, it's going to be a chore. I hope you've enjoyed this week's video blog, and I hope that you will embrace this constructively bored kid idea. Try it for yourself. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Leave your phone in your car when you go to the store. Hey, and wait, and just let your mind rest and be creatively bored. I hope you'll join me next time. Thanks.